Good evening, I'm Alma Angeles and you're watching Eagle News International on tonight's headlines. A tropical cyclone, Mocha, has intensified in the Bay of Bengal and could have major humanitarian impacts as soon as the coming weekend. Ukraine said it had retaken swathes of ground near the frontline city of Bakhmut, but Russia insisted it had repelled an attack along the broad stretch of the front line. More than 10,000 migrants arriving each day ahead of the midnight deadline hours ago. Now, just before the end of that Title 42, that pandemic-era rule restricting immigration. Now, the U.S. COVID-era Title 42 immigration policy ended, and migrants entering the system are anxious over how the change may affect their asylum claims. And take a look, a YouTube pilot who bailed out midair and deliberately sent his plane crashing into the ground to bolster viewing numbers on his channel could be jailed for up to 20 years. First in our news, Tropical Cyclone Mocha has intensified in the Bay of Bengal and could have major humanitarian impacts as soon as this weekend, according to the World Meteorological Organization. Already classified as very dangerous, Mocha is forecasted to intensify further before it makes landfall between Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh and Myanmar's Rakhine State around noon local time on Sunday. Take a look.
It's a very dangerous cyclone, as I said. It's associated with violent winds. And what's especially concerning here in this part of the world is the storm surge is forecast to have a height of about 2 to 2.5 meters above the normal astronomical tide level. This is likely to inundate low-lying areas of North Myanmar and adjoining southeast Bangladesh coasts.
As you know, Cox's Bazar hosts the world's biggest refugee camp. There are approximately 1 million Rohingyas who are living here, and they have been in displacement for many years. And they are exposed to quite a number of disasters, and they almost completely depend on humanitarian assistance. And this cyclone comes at a time where our funding is also going down.
The expected area of impact in Rakhine is low-lying and highly prone to flooding. Heavy rains and strong winds are also expected to hit inland communities, so away from the coast in Myanmar's northwest, which are also prone to landslides and flooding.
Violent winds and a storm surge of up to 2.5 meters above the normal tide level are projected, with the risk of heavy rainfall, flash floods, and landslides. Communities and aid organizations are preparing to help mitigate the impact of the most vulnerable by training volunteers, pre-positioning supplies, and organizing mobile medical teams. Cox's Bazar hosts the world's largest refugee camp, home to some 1 million Rohingya refugees across Rakhine and Myanmar's northwest. There are already about 6 million people in need of humanitarian assistance and 1.2 million displaced. And more severe weather this time in the U.S. across the Great Plains. The first tornado report from Nebraska occurred just after 12:30 p.m. CDT near Arnold, Nebraska in Custer County, according to AccuWeather.com. AccuWeather reports that a second tornado occurred just after 3:30 p.m. CDT near Spalding, Nebraska. In southeastern Nebraska, a rope tornado was reported near Table Rock Sunday afternoon or Saturday afternoon. The Table Rock area was also impacted by baseball-sized hail as the damaging storm trekked through the region. Another round of tornado reports occurred at around 5:30 p.m. CDT near North Bend. At least 30 preliminary tornado reports were listed by the National Weather Service's Storm Prediction Center on Friday. A tornado watch remains in effect. Meanwhile, Ukraine said it had retaken swathes of ground near the frontline city of Bakhmut, as Russia insisted it had repelled an attack along a broad stretch of the front line. Yevgeny Prigozhin, the head of the Wagner mercenary group, who's spearheading Moscow's attack on Bakhmut, accused the Russian army of fleeing from around the eastern Ukraine city. Take a look.
Взятие Бахмута Российской Федерации не дает ничего, потому что фланги сыпятся, фронт проваливается. И попытки Министерства обороны в информационном поле каким-то образом сгладить ситуацию, она приводит и приведет к глобальной трагедии для России. Поэтому надо прекратить немедленно врать. Если вы убежали, выстраивайте новые линии обороны.
Now, Russia denied Ukraine made any breakthroughs, saying reports of territorial losses do not correspond to reality. AFP couldn't verify these claims with independent sources. Solidar fell to Russian forces at the end of January after being virtually razed to the ground. It's around 15 kilometers northeast of Bakhmut, the current epicenter of the fighting. A Ukrainian offensive has been in preparation for months, with the front largely frozen since last year, and the bulk of fighting taking place around Bakhmut. Earlier on Friday, Ukraine reported a 2-kilometer gain in Bakhmut. The head of the Wagner private military group spearheading Moscow's attack on Bakhmut, Yevgeny Prigozhin, also said Kiev had made successful counterattacks. Without mentioning a retreat, the Russian army said it had redeployed units north of Bakhmut near Berkoshkoy Reservoir to increase the strength of the line of defense.
В солидарском тактическом направлении противник вчера провел наступательные действия на всей линии боевого соприкосновения сторон протяженностью более 95 километров. Подразделениями вооруженных сил Украины было предпринято 26 атак, в которых были задействованы более 1000 военнослужащих, до 40 танков, а также другая военная и специальная техника. Все атаки подразделений вооруженных сил Украины отражены. Прорывов обороны российских войск не допущено.
In tonight's other news, President Marcos Jr. has emphasized the need for the Philippines and Vietnam to reach an agreement to avoid potential maritime disputes. The president discussed with Vietnamese Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh his intent to hold a dialogue with Hanoi to avoid a repeat of sightings of Vietnamese vessels in the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. The president also ensured that the Philippines is committed to the implementation of the Declaration of the Conduct of Parties in the South China Sea, as well as the early conclusion of an effective and substantive code of conduct in the South China Sea. Again, let's listen in.
We're asking the wrong side. We're waiting for the continued work that is being developed, that is being done to develop the framework for the code of conduct. But ASEAN is already, halos lahat brought it up and said sana the code of conduct, sana naman nandyan na yung code of conduct para maging maliwanag ang mga posisyon ng mga iba't bansa ng China. Alam natin yung mga gagawin, what are the rules. Nag-usap kami ng Prime Minister, we have to find a way. Sabi ko, wag yung ganito na nag-aano tayo, mag-usap tayo na mabuti. And that's why I have asked our foreign ministers, ating foreign secretary, and then the foreign minister of Vietnam to begin develop the talks so that we can have an agreement na hindi na siguro magka-problema ng mga ganyang klase. Dahil hindi naman contentious, it's something that we never had to worry about before, ngayon lang. Kaya't kailangan habang maaga, pag-usapan na natin at makahanap na tayo ng sarili nating usapan para maliwanag nga.
The president said the talks between the Philippines and Vietnam should start as early as possible. More than 10,000 migrants arriving each day ahead of the midnight deadline hours ago, just before the end of the Title 42, that pandemic-era rule restricting immigration. And now the U.S. COVID-era Title 42 immigration policy has ended. Migrants entering the system now are anxious over how the change may affect their asylum claims. Let's listen in.
Let me be clear. The lifting of the Title 42 public health order does not mean our border is open. In fact, it is the contrary. Our use of our immigration enforcement authorities under Title VIII of the United States Code means tougher consequences for people who cross the border illegally. We're going to continue to execute our plan, to take individuals into our custody, to remove them very quickly under our immigration authorities when they don't qualify for relief. People are going to see our plan take hold. It will take time. It will succeed. For those individuals, those people who do not use our lawful pathways, we have tougher consequences to deliver to them if they arrive at our southern border and cross illegally.
Información porque solicito pasar. Ya tengo, desde enero estoy aquí.
En toda la frontera estamos hablando más de miles de venezolanos, en pura frontera. En estos momentos vienen en el tren, vienen miles de venezolanos. ¿Qué van a hacer con ellos? En la selva van saliendo demasiados venezolanos. ¿Qué van a hacer con ellos?
Now, there were widespread predictions that attempts to cross the 2,000-mile border would surge after Title 42 ended, but there was no immediate sign of that on Friday. Over the previous week, however, U.S. border officials told media they had seen record attempts, up to 10,000 daily. For asylum seekers, it has launched an app, CB Pone, to arrange immigration interviews at the border, while many have complained of glitches.
Pues la verdad es una que no tenemos teléfono para meterlos a la aplicación, otra que tenemos que ver cómo conseguimos algo.
Of course, those conversations are part of the information that they provide us. I know they have increased processing from, I think they were doing 750 to 1,000, so they are making those incremental. The time frame for the CBP app has also increased, so we're seeing improvements. But I would defer to the feds.
The border policy shift ordered by President Joe Biden has been controversial, with his supporters on the left saying new rules are too strict, while opponents on the right have claimed without evidence that he is opening the borders. His new policy came under immediate legal attack. In Florida, a federal judge agreed to a request from the state's Republican administration and ordered Border Patrol to stop granting parole to border crossers and asylum seekers, letting them remain in the U.S. while their cases are reviewed, a process that can take years. And in Texas, 13 Republican-led states filed a suit declaring parole illegal. They said parole creates incentives for even more illegal aliens to travel to the southwest border. The United Nations warned any lasting solution to the region's migration challenges would have to be built jointly by the U.S. and its southern neighbors. Also now, an investigation is underway on how a teenaged Honduran migrant teen died at a federally contracted facility in Florida housing unaccompanied minors. Honduran Foreign Minister Enrique Reina identified the boy as 17-year-old Angel Eduardo Maradiaga Espinosa and said that he died in a shelter in Safety Harbor, Florida. The boy received a clean bill of health on May 5th, but he was hospitalized 2 days ago. He said the HHS investigation is now underway into his death. The death came in a week that thousands of migrants made last-ditch attempts to enter the U.S. before a major change in immigration rules went into effect, including tough new measures for people crossing the border illegally. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre called the death devastating news. Staying in the U.S., a U.S. mother with doomsday religious beliefs was found guilty of murdering 2 of her children and conspiring to kill her husband's ex-wife. Lori Vallow was on trial in the northwestern U.S. state of Idaho over the deaths of her 16-year-old daughter, Tylee Ryan, and adopted 7-year-old son, Joshua or JJ Vallow. Vallow, who has reportedly claimed to be a goddess charged with preparing humanity for the second coming of Christ, faces up to life in prison without parole. Her 5th husband, Chad Daybell, the self-published author of several apocalyptic novels, will soon go on trial separately over similar charges, which also include the murder of his first wife, Tammy. The couple's religious beliefs were cited by prosecutors as a factor in the murders, and their story was the subject subject of a Netflix true crime documentary series, Sins of Our Mother, released last year. In October 2019, Daybell's wife Tammy died ostensibly of natural causes. Vallow and Daybell moved to Hawaii a few weeks later, where they married. Vallow and Daybell never reported that the children were missing, and their bodies were found in June 2020 on a property owned by Daybell in Idaho. Vallow, raised a Mormon, became increasingly radical in her religious beliefs over time, coming to believe she could communicate with angels. Prosecutors also claimed a financial motive for the crimes. Vallow was also convicted of grand theft, having obtained Social Security benefits intended for her already deceased children. Daybell is charged with insurance fraud. The IMF warned of negative consequences to the global economy if U.S. leadership is unable to resolve its political impasse over negotiations to extend the debt ceiling crunch talks between U.S. President Joe Biden and senior Republicans have been postponed until early next week to allow staff to continue working. The White House said this in a statement on Thursday. The Republican Speaker of the House of Representatives, Kevin McCarthy, accused Democrats, including Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, of holding up the deal and vice versa. Let's listen in.
That the next 2 weeks are different. I'm hoping this president understands, as the leader of this nation, that you can't sit back and hold the country hostage. You can't be so extreme in your views that you're not going to negotiate. I'm Speaker of the House. I'm not the leader of the Senate. I'm not the president. So your question is, will not default? I've done everything in my power to make sure it will not default. We have passed a bill that raised the debt limit. Now, I haven't seen that in the Senate, so I don't know.
What's really troubling about the Speaker's position is it's a partisan bill, and he says take it or leave it, or we could default. By not taking default off the table, Speaker McCarthy is greatly endangering America and making it much harder to make progress on budget negotiations.
They're doing the best, to the best of my knowledge, what no other political party has done in our nation's history. They're literally, not figuratively, holding the economy hostage by threatening to default on our nation's debt that we've already incurred over the last couple hundred years, unless we give in to their threats and demands as to what they think we should be doing with it. Because if we default on our debt, the whole world is in trouble.
We encourage all of the interested parties to come together, reach consensus to urgently resolve the matter. And of course, the reason that we're calling for this is because we are concerned about the severe repercussions for both the U.S. economy, but also the global economy. The situation in the U.S., of course, is marked by some uncertainty. At the same time, we have seen resilience in the labor market in the U.S. And in some of the underlying economic figures. So on the U.S., I think the bottom line is right now, our April WEO forecast remains relevant. We see that the impact could be 0.2% of global GDP, or the cost of fragmentation could be 0.2% of global GDP. But if we move into the realm of more extensive or runaway fragmentation, the cost could be as high as 7% of global GDP. And if we add technological decoupling, the cost could rise to 12% of GDP for some countries. So we are encouraging countries, when they look to strengthen their supply chain, to do this on the basis of economic logic, as our managing director has said, and to limit these costs very much to the lower end of that bound, to ensure that the global economy remains strong and robust.
The two sides remain sharply divided over the debt ceiling, with Republicans in Congress insisting that Biden agree to significant budget cuts in exchange for support to lift the limit before the country runs out of money to pay its existing bills. Democrats have been calling for a clean increase of the borrowing limit, accusing Republicans of using extreme tactics to push their political agenda ahead of the so-called X date, the point at which the U.S. will be unable unable to meet its financial obligations. Both sides look to avoid the X-date, which U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has warned could come as soon as June 1.
In my assessment, and that of economists across the board, a default on U.S. obligations would produce an economic and financial catastrophe. Millions of Americans could lose their jobs, household incomes would be reduced, American businesses would see credit markets deteriorate, and millions of American families that receive government payments would likely be left without the resources that they were promised. Short of a default, brinksmanship over the debt limit can also impose serious economic costs. We know this from recent history. As we learned in 2011, just the serious threat of default can lead to a downgrade of our credit rating and a weakening of consumer confidence. We could see a rise in interest rates drive up payments on mortgages, auto loans, and credit cards. We're already seeing spikes in interest rates for debt due around the date that the debt limit may bind.
A YouTuber pilot who bailed out mid-air and deliberately sent his plane crashing into the ground to bolster viewing numbers on his channel could be jailed for up to 20 years. Take a look.
Holy I'm over the mountains and I get out and exit out.
And this awkward dive out. This YouTuber faces 20 years in prison for crashing his plane to get views. Trevor Jacob bailed out of his light aircraft, selfie stick in hand, over the Los Padres National Forest in California. His video, "I crashed my airplane," has since been viewed nearly 3 million times. Cameras on the aircraft showed it plummeting out of control before it crashed into the forest. The 29-year-old filmed himself despairing over the wreckage and then trying to find his way back to civilization without water before finally coming across a vehicle as night fell. Investigators claim he then tried to cover up what he had done by winching the wreckage out of the forest by helicopter, breaking it into small pieces and then dumping it into bins. In tonight's other news, a large-scale outbreak of the Moroccan locust, one of the world's most damaging plant pests, across 8 provinces in Afghanistan's wheat basket could cause massive crop losses and dramatically worsen food insecurity. The UN's Food and Agriculture Organization sounded the alarm after locusts were spotted in the country's north and northeast. FAO said that a full outbreak this year could destroy up to 1.2 million metric tons of wheat, or a quarter of the total annual harvest. FAO representative in Afghanistan, Richard Trenchard, said that together with partners, the agency was racing to help reduce the impact of the outbreak. With pesticides in short supply, thousands of people in communities across the affected provinces were working day and night to eradicate the pests, using traditional mechanical control methods before they become adults and begin to swarm, he said. Left untreated, the Moroccan locust population could increase 100-fold in the next year, according to FAO. Earlier this year, the UN World Food Program warned that 6 million Afghans were one step away from famine. And take a look, a fireball that streaked across the sky in southern Japan may have been caused by a space debris from a Chinese rocket. Take a look. And this video of the fireballs lit up social media on Wednesday night, with residents and users speculating on what might have caused the unusual display. The National Astronomical Observatory of Japan said the movement of the object suggested it was not a meteorite, but looked exactly like the atmospheric entry of debris from a rocket, possibly from a Chinese launch in November. The space junk was predicted to land in the sea and pose no danger to residents. It was beautiful. It looked looked like a weeping cherry blossom tree, according to one Twitter user writing this off the display. But it's good to know it wasn't something dangerous. In line with the celebration of Earth Day 2023, the Health Wellness event is a community partnership led by the Capital Governorate in alignment with the Governorate's initiatives and projects aimed at preserving and improving health, well-being, and the environment. The one-day free entry event in Bahrain was held at a beach. It saw up to 1,000 attendees. Here's Loyal Kalimliam reporting from Bahrain.
Today we are here at Water Garden City 5th District celebrating Earth Day, which was globally held on 22nd of April. Marking today's event is first of its kind. Here in the Kingdom of Bahrain, Earth Day celebration aimed at preserving and improving health, well-being, and the environment. Different communities gathered at the location to make the event a successful one. The celebration comprised of tree planting, mental health panel discussion, followed by the main highlight of the event, the LED light ceremony in the shape of Bahrain map.
Under the patronage of His Excellency, the Governor of Capital Governorate, today we are attending the Earth Day celebration for the first time in the Capital Garden City. So this project took us more than 2 months. We have more than 1,000 participants with more than 120 volunteers. A lot of partners were supporting us to do this project and show it as a Bahrain map from all nationalities and all residents who are living in the Kingdom of Bahrain, to show that we are one community and we are all promoting for better earth and better health for everyone.
We are very happy, the Philippine Embassy here in Manama, Kingdom of Bahrain, to be part of this celebration of Earth Day 2023, which is spearheaded by the Capital Governorate of the Kingdom of Bahrain. So I think this shows how much the Filipino community here is engaging with the local Bahraini society in gratitude for the accepting environment, enabling environment that the Bahrainis have provided for the Filipinos here. So we are delighted that we are part of this, because this is the teaching also that we have to contribute to our community and fitness and health, and of course the tree planting.
So basically from our part is actually the production part of it, and the registration part, and the attendees basically. So the concept itself. So we are thankful because we are very much and highly appreciated by the Capital Governorate.
I think the lights will like 2,000 lights LED, and then the people who came here is really like 1,500.
This environmental awareness, health and wellness is indeed a history. Saving nature and prioritizing one's health and well-being are some of the motivations and initiatives that benefit the future generation. This is Lorlin Kalimlim, your Eagle News correspondent from Bahrain, and we live in extraordinary times.
Vincent van Gogh's feverish final months in a French village, when he churned out masterpieces even as he spiraled into despair, are the subject of a one-off exhibition opening this week in Amsterdam. Titled In of His Final Months, the collection highlights his last 70 days spent in the town before he took his own life. A fitting topic, according to director Emily Gordenker, to mark the Van Gogh Museum's 50th anniversary. Take a look.
Well, the Van Gogh Museum is 50 years old this year. It's our anniversary. And on that occasion, we wanted to do something really extraordinary. And that's what this is. This is an exhibition about Van Gogh's very last period, his last 70 days that he spent in a town called Auvers-sur-Oise. It's about very close to Paris. And he worked himself really so hard in this last period until he had a tough time, until he decided to end his life. Never a really tough time before he came to Auvers. He really suffered very much from his mental condition. He comes to Auvers and he has a lot of new energy, and he really gets to work. You do see, though, that there's creeps over him, a feeling of unease. You see that very clearly in the wheat field with crows behind us. But at the same time, let's not forget, he kept working, he kept trying out new things. And there's also a lot of joy in the work here. And to me, it's amazing that right up until his very last day, he kept painting, he kept working, he kept the energy.
I think we, working on this exhibition, we still are amazed by not just the number of paintings that he did in Auvers in this short period, but also the great quality of it and the great audacity, the expressiveness, the experiment that is there until the very last day. I think it shows how great a painter he was. He wanted to paint Gogh's portrait, and Gogh was very happy to pose, especially since he had seen the self-portrait that Vincent took with him from Saint-Rémy, the wonderful self-portrait that we have now also in the exhibition on loan from the Musée d'Orsay. So he posed for him at the table in his garden. This red table was in the garden of Dr. Gogh's house, and he is posing in the classical pose of the melancholic person.
Van Gogh arrived in Auvers-sur-Oise near Paris on May 20, 1890, after spending time in southern France, where he already struggled with bouts of mental illness. As time went on, a feeling of unease again crept over Van Gogh, as seen in paintings like Wheat Field with Crows, which was followed by another ominous landscape, Wheat Field under thunderclouds. Indeed, Van Gogh, in one of his last letters to his brother Theo, says about his final painting, Tree Roots, that my life too is attacked at the very root. My step is also faltering, unquote. Feelings of failure, loneliness, and melancholy gradually gained the upper hand. Van Gogh shot himself in the chest shortly after finishing Tree Roots and died 2 days later. The exhibition Van Gogh in Auvers, his final months, runs from May 12 to September 3, before moving to the Musée d'Orsay from October 3 until February 4 next year. Other news from R-rated sci-fi to juvenile biker, fistfight streaming platforms are locked in an intensifying battle for dominance in one of the entertainment sector's hottest and most lucrative mediums, anime. Take a look.
So my main one is Crunchyroll, and then I love the anime on Netflix, Amazon Prime, and there's a new, I forgot the platform, but there's a new anime platform that's not used as much. It's the one that has the Neverland, the Abyss one on there, so I can't remember, but mostly those three.
よく見てるので、本当どれが一番っていうよりかは全部好き特にネットフリックスはさくらちゃん、カードキャプターさくらやってるので必須です。
そうですね。ネットフリックスも一応会にはなってるんですけど、結構ドラマの主人公だったんですけど、独自作品っていうのはちょこちょこ、原作があるあとスプリガンとかっていうのが独占配信でやってたのを見て、すごいやっぱり面白いなとは思いました。
Now, fueled in part by the pandemic, the popularity of anime has created a gold mine for the likes of Netflix, Disney Plus, and Amazon Prime. The global market was valued at $28.6 billion in 2022, according to the Grand View Research, and is forecast to as much as double in value by 2030. Last year, Disney Plus announced exclusive streaming rights to Season 2 of smash hit teen biker gang saga Tokyo Revengers, part of a lucrative deal with publishing giant Kodansha. Amazon Prime has also sought to monopolize blockbusters, said anime expert Tadashi Sudo, including One Piece film Red, Japan's highest grossing movie last year. Netflix has proven something of an outlier in this market, going beyond snatching up existing hits to work directly with animation studios, granting them an unusual amount of creative leeway to make new stories. Traditionally, Japanese anime emerges from production committees made up of publishers, TV broadcasters, toy makers, and other industry players. These have long had a key role in broadening revenue possibilities for a series from character merchandising to gaming. As always, I'll end the week on a thoughtful note. Our ability to look back and smile at our past is proof that God's plan is to keep us moving forward. This has been Eagle News International. I'm Alma Angela. Stay alert, stay informed, because we live in extraordinary times. Good night.